Hey, what's going on YouTube? Hope you're all having a fantastic weekend. Today, I'm bringing you a guide on Midlane Syndra, the Dark Sovereign.
So much untapped power!
Damn, Syndra needs to chill out a little bit. Anyways, as for Syndra's pros and cons, well, she's a powerful mid-lane AP carry. Lots of her abilities are skill shots as well, which gives her one of the highest skill ceilings for a champion in League of Legends. She also has really high single target burst damage from her ultimate and can delete any squishy champions with it. She also has a ton of AoE damage and a game-changing skill shot stun, which can stun an entire team if they're lined up. She, however, is very fragile and it can be very unforgiving. She has basically no mobility, and if she doesn't have her stun combo, she can do absolutely nothing to a champion that gets on top of her. She demands excellent positioning and a great sense of timing. However, with strong positioning and a great use of her abilities, she can be an absolute powerhouse in team fights. For her masteries, we go 12 Ferocity and 18 Cunning, grabbing Thunderlord's Decree as our keystone mastery. The reason for Thunderlords, well, it's really the only thing that synergizes well with Syndra's combos. Syndra's pretty much a champion that focuses on deleting one single target and then providing an AoE stun on the rest. To delete that single target, well, you take Thunderlord's Decree for that nice little added portion of damage. Deathfire's Touch is an okay alternative. It does add a little bit when you are poking the enemy, but it will not add near as much in a combo. For our runes, we go 9 Greater Marks of Magic Penetration, 9 Greater Seals of Scaling Health, 6 Greater Glyphs of Scaling Cooldown Reduction, 3 Greater Glyphs of Magic Resist, and 3 Greater Quintessences of Ability Power. In our item build, we're only able to pick up 30% cooldown reduction, so we get these 6 Greater Glyphs of Scaling Cooldown Reduction to get an extra 10% for max at level 18. Since we won't have a ton of magic resist from our runes, we then want to get the Scaling Health on our yellows, so we're still rather tanky in the mid lane. As for the rest, well, magic penetration to get through any magic resist, and ability power for doing more damage. For our summoners, we take Flash and Ignite. Syndra's a very immobile champion with no built-in escape. Flash is then great, so when enemy champions get on top of you, you're not completely fucked. Now don't spam your Flash too often. If you do have a stun combo, try to land that and then walk away, but if you don't have your stun combo available, you're pretty much going to have to use Flash. This can also be incredible for flashing forward and using your stun combo to catch people off guard that are very far away. This can land your team tons and tons of picks and give you a massive advantage in the next team fight when it's 4v5. As for Ignite, well, it's great on Syndra to add some nice kill pressure in the lane. At level 6, with your stun combo ultimate and Ignite, well, you can pretty much delete any squishy target you fight in the mid lane. If you're unfortunate in the draft and you end up having to go against a very mobile champion like Talon or Ahri or something that you will struggle against, you may want Barrier or Heal. Ignite's going to do literally nothing for you if an enemy assassin jumps on you, dodges your stun combo, and then deletes you and you don't have anything to help you defensively. So now we're going to look at each of her abilities, starting with her passive, Transcendent. So very simply, whenever you max an ability, you get an additional effect. This is a pretty weird passive considering it does absolutely nothing until you're level 9, which is where you can actually have one maxed ability. Your spheres will last an additional 2 seconds, which makes comboing just a little bit easier. For Force of Will, whenever you throw your orbs, it will increase the size of the slow and damage zone on reactivation. Scatter the Weak is actually pretty nice because the cone width is increased by 50%. This makes it a lot easier with that increased cone size to stun multiple targets in team fights and give your team a bigger advantage. Unleash Power, which is your ultimate, then gets an extra 75 on its range, which is pretty nice because you can be pretty damn far away from targets to get your ultimate off now. Syndra's only a mediocre champion at the moment in the mid lane, and I feel like if they put something on the passive that actually lasted the full game, it would actually make her a hell of a lot better. But this is what we have as our passive, and we have to make do with what we got. Next up is your Q, Dark Sphere, which is your bread and butter ability. That's because this actually creates the spheres that your other abilities use. It has a pretty long range and decent sized blast zone, which makes it pretty great for dealing harassment or farming. This ability does have a slight charge time as well before it explodes and is similar to Lay Waste. But of course it does have a much larger area of effect. So you kind of have to predict where the enemy is moving to when you cast this ability so they're still in that area when it does explode. If they're at the edge of the zone when you cast this and they're walking away from it, this will do no damage at all. It'll take a bit of getting used to, but it's not the hardest thing to land considering the AoE is relatively big. This is of course the first part of your QE stun combo, as this creates the sphere for you to push with your E, which will, of course, being a stun combo, stun somebody. Next up is Syndra's W, Force of Will, and she's able to grab any sphere, enemy minion, or jungle creep with this ability. It's a pretty decent ability that does some AoE damage and has a slow component. It, however, has a really high mana cost, and you shouldn't really use it too much in the early game. Now, being that this is a grab mechanic, it can be kind of weird to learn how to use properly. When you use this ability, you have to wait until Syndra actually has a hold of it before you can throw it. The throw then has a flight time, which does vary depending on how far you're throwing it. This can take a little bit of getting used to, because you do have to predict where the enemy will be when you are throwing the item. At full range, this gives the enemy the ability to evade or flash what you're throwing. All in all, a good AoE damage ability that provides a slow, which is good enough to max second, right behind our Q. Next up is our E, Scatter the Weak. This is our knockback cone that forms Syndra's powerful stun combo with Dark Sphere, which is our Q. On its own, the knockback component can stop melee gap closers and break channeled abilities, which makes her great against stuff like Katarina. When you combine this with a Dark Sphere, however, the scatter gains a long-range CC that can knock back and stun multiple targets. This is a very important combo that Syndra has, and can be insanely game-breaking. Her QE combo is basically her single defense against enemy gankers. If you can land this combo against somebody coming in for a gank, you can back out since they'll be stunned, or even go for a kill with your ultimate if available. This combo actually has a really long range, and it can be great for disrupting team fights, catching enemies, or peeling for your allies. You can pretty much think of this combo as a Sona ultimate. A very, very low cooldown Sona ultimate. It is an amazing combo, and you must learn how to use it. Last up is her ultimate, Unleashed Power. This is easily one of the best single target bursts in the entire game. What makes it even better is the fact that it is a point and click ability. It cannot miss. You have to keep in mind, however, that each active Dark Sphere on the field adds more overall damage to Unleashed Power. This means you actually have to pay attention to the Dark Spheres around you, so you are doing as much damage with this ability as possible. You can have a lot of spheres on the ground. Something like 4 is pretty easy to have, but something like 7 is insanely hard to do. Use your Q as much as you can, pay attention to your cooldowns, and when you have a lot of orbs, then you can use an ultimate. For our ability order, Unleashed Power of course comes in first at 6, 11, and 16. Next is Dark Sphere. This is our bread and butter ability, and it actually makes the spheres that we use. We then followed up with Force of Will for that nice AoE slow and AoE damage. Finally, since it does not provide as much as our Q and W, we take Scatter the Weak, our E, which is our stun ability. In the early game, we want to be careful with our abilities. All of our abilities do AoE damage except for our ultimate. If we're spamming them too often, we may be doing too much damage to the minion wave and push it under the enemy tower. This could be really, really bad for us, considering it could put us in a very horrendous position and we would be low on mana. We are very, very gankable since we don't have a built-in escape, so don't be in a horrible position. Your max range Dark Sphere and Scatter the Weak combo can be great for trading, but this could also put you in a bad situation. You are insanely vulnerable when you don't have your stun combo, and if somebody comes in for a gank, you may be completely screwed. Use this enough to trade effectively, but if you know you're going to be in a bad situation soon, don't use it because you may need it to save your own life. You can also use your Force of Will to secure CS on cannon minions if they are too far away, and you would be in a bad position if you went too close. The last thing you have to keep in mind when you are in the early game is that you are very, very mana inefficient. One single QWE combo can completely drain your mana, and I'm not kidding. You can lose a lot of your mana if you're using your abilities too often, so don't do it. Yet again, if you are going into a bad position and you can't use a stun combo because you don't have any mana, you could be completely fucked. In the mid game, we pretty much want to try to snipe stun high value targets from a long distance with our QE stun combo. This will allow a lot of other champions like Leona who have other stuns to follow up for a chain CC and land easy kills. In team fights, we pretty much want to try and get our QE AoE stun combo on as many frontline targets as possible. This will allow your champions to engage much more effectively, and your AD carries and other squishy targets will be able to reposition where they need to. Once you have a lot of orbs on the ground, you can then follow up with an Unleashed Power on a high kill target, completely taking somebody out of the team fight. In the mid game, you have to be very careful when moving around solo. You are insanely squishy since you don't have your Zonias yet, and champions like Rengar and Kha'Zix can blow you up before you can even do a stun combo. The late game is a lot like the mid game, except we'll have 40% CDR and Zonias built. With this amount of cooldown reduction, our unleashed power will only have a 48-second cooldown. That's pretty crazy, because at this point in the game, death timers are going to be longer than that, and we could delete somebody, have them respawn, and delete them again. Zonias will also make us a lot more durable. We can do our QE stun combo, screw around for a little bit, pop Zonias when needed, and use another QE stun combo after we get out. You still want to be trying to stun as many frontline targets in teamfights as possible, and deleting squishy targets. Our hard matchups is pretty much exclusively very mobile champions that can dodge our QE stun combo. Kassadin, Ahri, LeBlanc, and Fizz are all able to do this and can put a ton of damage on us and delete us if we miss our combo. In these matchups, we have to play a lot more defensively than we normally would. You have to wait until these champions engage on you, follow up with your QE stun combo, hopefully it lands, and then maybe you can burst them with your ultimate afterwards. As for Galio, well, you just can't do enough damage to Galio for it to even matter. This guy builds a lot of magic resist since he scales off of it, and you will never have the damage to actually bring him down. He, however, can get on top of you as well, although not as good as any of the other champions, and deal a ton of damage, and even lock you down with his ultimate if it's needed. Yet again, try to keep your range. When he does try to move onto you, use your stun combo and run away. They will be hard for you 1v1, but just keep in mind that you offer a ton more in team fights. Last but certainly not least is our item build. Like pretty much all other mid laners out there, we start with a Doran's Ring, health potions, and a warding totem. For our first buys, we want either a Morello's or a Seeker's Armguard. This of course depends on if you are against an AP mid laner, or you need the armor if you're against something like a Zed or Talon. After you select one of those, you of course get some Boots of Speed, and when level 9, get a Farsight alteration. Now assuming we're against an AP mid laner, our core build will be a Morello's, Luden's Echo, and Sork Boots. This gives a ton of damage, 20% CDR, grievous wounds, and an amazing burst from the passive on Luden's Echo. We then of course pick up a nice little chunk of magic penetration on the Sork Boots to get through any early magic resist. Now Syndra is a champion which really relies on bursting a single target. Luden's Echo is therefore a great pickup on her, and I take it every single game, which is why it's in the core build. You of course have very little mobility, like I've said, I don't even know how many times this guide, and this gives 10% movement speed, so you can actually move around a bit more effectively as well. Now for our full build, we then grab a Rabadon's Death Cap. No surprise here, I'm sure. We're a bursty AP mage, we need a lot of AP, and Rabadon's gives you the most of it. Now at this point in the game, people are going to start having a lot of magic resist. The obvious answer to this? A Void Staff. Now if you are against a lot of mobile champions who are getting on top of you, you may want to get the Zonias before this. Generally, however, whenever I can, I do want to get the Void Staff to make sure that I can still keep deleting targets in teamfights. If you're having a really good game, you could get a Magi's as an alternative. A stacking AP item that can be incredible on Syndra, but however I usually don't take it too often as dying removes 10 stacks. If you're looking to get a little tankier, you can take any of the 3 other alternatives. If you would like a nice health pool, you can either get the Rod of Ages really early on in the game, or a Rylai's at some point in the game. Of course, if you need some magic resist, Abyssal Scepter is a great pickup as well. Now this is one of the few champions where I stick to the example full build pretty much exclusively. Every item in that full build adds exactly what she needs, and I don't really like replacing any of them. So that covers everything for our Season 6 Mid Lane Syndra guide. For more of our guides, you can go to our website, www.egamingtv.com. You could also talk to us on Twitter at egaming_TV, and we do skin giveaways on our Twitter, so if you're interested in the opportunity to win free skins, just follow us on Twitter, and when the skin giveaways are out, just retweet, and you could win free skins. Also, please let us know what you guys thought of the guide in the comments. We love getting feedback from you guys, and we read every single comment that we get. Also, if you guys did enjoy the video, please like and subscribe, as we have League of Legends content coming out every single day. So on that note, thank you guys a lot for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the other League of Legends videos. Peace.